Hey, Mr. P here. In this video, we're going to introduce forensic entomology and talk about not only what forensic entomology is, but why it's beneficial for forensic scientists and for our understanding of a crime scene and the events that happened within a crime scene. So, what is forensic entomology? Forensic entomology is all about the study of insects, specifically the insects that help tell us something about crime scenes or about decomposition or about a particular area. Okay, and we're going to get into all of these different descriptors, but for now, there are a tremendous assortment of insects on the planet, and that's probably not something that you really have appreciated until now, but there are a whole bunch of insects that all do specific roles within our environments, and they actually happen to be the most abundant, diverse, strange, and beautiful group of animals on Earth. There are no other groups of organisms, specifically birds, mammals, fish, reptiles, amphibians, that are as diverse and are as strange than insects are. And I would even go a step further and say that there are no groups of organisms like those mentioned before that have as much impact on their environment as insects do. There are approximately 1 million species of insects on the planet, which is a tremendous amount of organisms that impact the environments all over the world. Okay, and there are new species of insects being identified on the daily or on a daily basis. Okay, now one order of insects right here called diptera. In this particular image, it's a mosquito, but there are multiple insects within, or multiple species within order diptera. This is going to be probably the single most important order we're going to talk about in this particular unit. All of the flies, all the maggots, all of the pupa, all of the actual insects and the different stages of insect activity are going to be of significance to forensic scientists are going to come from, most of the time, the order of diptera. So we will dive into that and talk about what order diptera truly is. And diptera is the true flies. These are things such as mosquitoes, midge flies, sand flies, blowflies, and the common housefly. All of these insects in this particular image belong to order diptera, and the reason why this order is so important to not only forensic scientists but forensic entomologists is that flies, you'll learn as we navigate through this unit, are actually the most common colonizer of dead flesh or of a body because of the life cycle and of the lifestyle that these particular insects lead. Okay, more on that to come. But for now, order diptera, the true flies, are of tremendous significance to forensic entomologists and to you as we navigate through this unit. So, what are these insects? Entomology as a field of science is the study of insects and other arthropods. Now, not all entomologists study insects, and insects are not the only thing that are studied by entomologists. Arthropods contain the groups of organisms called spiders, scorpions, which collectively are known as arachnids, and crustaceans like snails and crabs and stuff like that. Okay? All of these kind of get bracketed into the field of science that studies them called entomology. That is the broad kind of area of science that specifically studies insects, but there is a sub-branch, if you will, of entomology that is specific to forensics, which, like we talked about in the first slide, forensic entomology, which would be not only studying these insects, but using our knowledge of insects and using the knowledge of entomology in general to help solve crimes, is forensic entomology. So, it's been estimated that insects have existed for more than 250 million years. That is way longer than humans have inhabited the Earth, which is roughly 200,000 years. So a lot of people consider humans to be a really, really old species, and we are actually not. We are actually very, very young as a species. insects have been on the planet for as long as dinosaurs in a lot of cases. So, insects are incredibly good at inhabiting and colonizing specific environments. They're really good at adapting, and they're really good at evolving to an ever-changing environment. Insects serve many ecological roles on our planet, including pollination of flowers and fruits and the decomposing of dead organic matter. Obviously, butterflies and honeybees, those are going to be more of your pollinators, and a lot of the food items that we have in our grocery stores, specifically in the produce section, are the direct result of animal pollination, both butterflies and, in most cases, the bees. Decomposing dead organic matter is just as important ecologically, and that would be things like the flies and the order of Diptera that I've already talked about. Okay, why is decomposing dead organic matter important? Well, if the insects and other decomposers were not good at their job and didn't have an ecological role or a niche that is decomposing, we would literally have a whole bunch of dead organisms, both plant matter and animal matter, just readily available in our environment, which would obviously breed bacteria and breed viral infections and be really, really bad, and on top of that would stink. But luckily, because we have decomposers in our environment, those nutrients that are locked into the biomass of both plants and animals are going to be very, very quickly returned to the soil as that plant and animal matter is decomposed through the ecological roles of these decomposers. And so flies in the order of Diptera are those decomposers. So, some anatomical features of an insect that I want you to be familiar with is all insects have 3 body segments. You can see here the 3 segments are the head, the thorax, and the abdomen. The head is attached to the thorax, which is kind of the midsection of an insect, and then the abdomen is also attached to the thorax, which is kind of the butt section of an insect. 3 body segments is a very, very good descriptor of individuals that belong to the group of organisms which are insects. If you compare those, like I said, to spiders, which are still studied within the field of entomology, spiders actually only have 2 body segments. It's a head and an abdomen. They do not have a thorax. Also, insects have 3 pairs of jointed legs, meaning they have 6 total jointed legs. Spiders, on the other hand, as you probably know, have 4 pairs of jointed legs, which are obviously giving them the total of 8 legs, which everybody knows is indicative of the group of organisms called spiders. So, the body of an insect is also supported by a chitinous exoskeleton. You probably know from your previous classes that chitin is a polysaccharide that is functional in nature, meaning it gives structural support to a lot of different things, in this case the exoskeleton of insects. Insects are invertebrates, meaning they don't have vertebra, they don't have an internal support system or an endoskeleton. They have an exoskeleton, which is the skeleton on the outside, and that exoskeleton is supported by chitin, which is a protein and carbohydrate matrix. Okay, most insects have wings. Not all insects have wings, but most do. The wings give obviously insects the ability to move themselves around their environment. It's a really good way of locomotion. Most insects begin life as eggs, but not all do. Most start as an egg and they will hatch into larvae. When we talk about the order of Diptera, which again we're going to focus on in this particular unit, all of the flies are going to be laid or start as eggs, and they will hatch into larvae, which are maggots, and then will metamorphosis or go through a metamorphosis, which is a kind of a change, a complete change, as they navigate from egg to larva to pupa to adult. Okay, so complete metamorphosis is what most insects undergo. Not all insects go through complete metamorphosis. Most of them do. An example of complete metamorphosis would be within butterflies, which a lot of people study from elementary age on. In the butterfly situation, an adult butterfly would be the types of butterflies you see in the gardens or in your yards all the time. They lay eggs. The eggs hatch into caterpillars. Caterpillars consume a bunch of biomass and leaf material. They will produce a chrysalis, which is a cocoon, and inside the cocoon, the larva, which is the caterpillar, will change into the adult and will hatch, if you will, out of the cocoon into the adult butterfly. That is a complete metamorphosis example, but for the purposes of forensic entomology, bugs like butterflies don't really produce much data for forensic entomologists, and so we use dipterans, or the flies. In this case, adult flies will lay eggs. Most of the time, the eggs will be laid on dead animal matter, okay? A decomposing body. Those eggs will hatch within 8 to 24 hours of being laid. The larva will, or the maggots, will come out of the eggs. They will consume flesh or decomposing flesh for roughly 4 to 7 days. They will produce the pupa, and then the larva will stay inside of this little cocoon for 10 to 20 days before they emerge as adult flies in order to continue this cycle. That is a complete metamorphosis, okay? The larva is a worm-like eating machine, meaning all it does is consume flesh and will consume flesh continuously for 4 to 7 days. The pupa is a life stage, but it is a non-eating subadult stage where the adult is being completely metamorphed into that adult form. Okay? So, forensic entomology. What is forensic entomology? It is the interpretation of insect evidence used in civil or criminal investigations. Again, it is the study of insects, but it is using and interpreting the insect evidence and our understanding of insects in order to help further or understand civil and criminal investigations. Evidence that we get or that we can get from entomology or from insects may be in the form of adult or the presence of adult insects, nymphs like subadult insects that undergo incomplete metamorphosis. An example of that would be grasshoppers. Grasshoppers actually look the same. Okay, small baby grasshoppers have the exact same body shape and body morphology as an adult grasshopper. They're just smaller. And so grasshoppers are going to undergo incomplete metamorphosis, which means they're growing, but they stay the same shape and the same physiology as they grow. Pupae, larvae, eggs, or insect body parts. All of those things can give us evidence, and they all can kind of mean different things within an investigation. Insects removed from a car's windshield, everybody's seen that, or radiator, or from the front bumper can contribute vital information for solving crimes. Like if a vehicle has insect evidence on it from a particular area, but a person that is known to drive that car claimed to have not been in that area, that is indefutable evidence that will suggest that that car and potentially that person was in fact in that particular location at that particular time. Okay? The job of a forensic entomologist is to collect and identify insect evidence and interpret it in relation to the environmental conditions and other variables that exist at a crime scene. Some of the different environment variables are going to be like weather data, temperature, humidity, potentially pH of the soil, rain patterns, okay, ambient air, lows and highs. Okay, all of these things are going to impact the rate at which insects grow, and that can infer, or forensic entomologists can infer from that information, how long a body has been in a particular environment based on the age of a particular insect, based on the known age of kind of known samples, right? Based on our understanding of how fast this particular species grows, we can discern based on where that particular organism is in its life cycle, we can kind of discern how long it's been there and how long potentially the body's been there, okay? Insect colonization. Insect colonization always happens on a body left in exposure to insects because, again, these dipterans, specifically the flies, like blowflies, are good at colonizing dead, organic, decaying flesh. The first thing they do is they come in and they lay eggs. Those eggs hatch into these larvae, which are maggots. The maggots will consume food for roughly a week, and then they will pupate before producing adult flies at the end of their complete metamorphosis. Okay? Insect colonization is, by definition, the arrival of insects on a dead body. It always happens. As long as the insects can gain access to the body, they will lay eggs and will colonize that particular body. Forensic entomology provides an estimate of the minimum and maximum amount of time that could have passed since colonization. You will learn as this unit goes on or progresses that we cannot specifically pinpoint, in most cases, an exact time of death based on insect activity. But what we can do is we can estimate the minimum amount of time that body's been out there and the maximum amount of time that that body's been out there based on insect activity, which gives us a window or an estimate for how long the body's been out there. Okay? It's still important data, and it's still an important piece to the investigation, but we cannot pinpoint an exact time of death, usually using just insect activity. Now, can we pair insect activity with other forms of evidence? Yes. And we can pretty narrowly pinpoint the window, or we can shrink the window, but we can't just use insect evidence to produce an exact time of death. Okay? The forensic entomologist report, along with all other evidence, reports from forensic toxicology, botany, which is the study of plants, and the autopsy, which is the study of the dead body from an anatomy and physiology standpoint, are then evaluated by the medical examiner, which is the coroner, or pathologist, which is an MD, who estimates the post-mortem interval. That is bolded because it is a vocab term. Okay? PMI is the shorthand kind of abbreviation for post-mortem interval, which is the time between death and discovery of the body. Most of the time, it's probably not hard to believe that people that are killed are not found or discovered the exact moment that they are killed, right? There is typically a period of time between when a person is killed and when the person is found that exists. That time is the post-mortem interval, okay, or PMI. Insects, and specifically forensic entomology, helps us to estimate how much time that post-mortem interval, or that PMI, is. Okay? If you have questions, bring those to class. Look for future videos. See ya.